the Nasdaq 100 and the S&P 500. We start with the Nasdaq, and as you can see, this is the weekly chart. We're getting a pretty big pullback. Now we're coming right back into the level that we mentioned in yesterday's video. If you remember, 19.7. We said if we break and hold below 19.95, which we did, we rejected all morning, early morning session, and then drop down 200 points to that level. Was very clear about that. Now, if we break below this level, this is where things really could start seeing weakness. We break, it's almost a 300-point drop to our next level around 19.4. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion and viewpoint going into the next week and a half, because I think that things could get a little bit worse in the short term, but I am still looking in the long-term horizon, and I still see some very big opportunities. But I think for the next few days and weeks, you might want to be patient. Okay, that's what I want to say first overall. So really quick, going into something like SPY, as you can see, we're breaking back below that level. And again, we go to something like the hourly to give you a better visual here. And as you can see, we break below that level we marked out yesterday, 550. You break, you retest this morning, you're pushing back down. You clearly don't have too much until you come back down to the bottom level of this level of the next zone here. Obviously, that previous high as well. So almost, $6 of downside potentially until our next support there. And then again, once you break that, it gets illiquid once again. So again, I do see downside potential here on SPY. Now again, I want to be really clear though, because over the next few days, you're going to have some big earnings coming back into play. And we've seen this happen before. We see a really nice run and giving you just a visual where stocks have this great run, momentum buying happens, earnings come out, we see selling kind of occurred, pull us back, everyone panics, but then we kind of settle, and then earnings continue to push us back in a direction. Now, I don't want to say that you're going to get a great earnings push or this or that. Now, I will say, so for some of these tech names and what's happened on broad markets, that I kind of expect some decent movement. But the important thing to realize is where we're at on these drops so far and overall understanding the viewpoint of the market. Because if we're just coming back down into some previous highs that where we previously broke out of, are we necessarily bearish? That's for you to break down and, to make your own opinion about when it comes to your trading. But all in all, we look at this push since the beginning of June. It's been quite amazing to say the least. We're back at levels not seen since, July 5th, about 2 weeks, a week ago, give or take, about 10 days ago, roughly. So again, that's where we're at right now. Now, broad markets, again, throughout this as well, we go to something like the dollar, what's happening with yields. You see the dollar pushing back into the 200 SMA. Want to see if it rejects there. You go to the 30-year yield. Again, we look here, again, showing weakness, pushing back down as well. Mortgage rates pretty much unchanged from where they were the last time we went over them. I'll cover that more on Sunday's video as well. So those are the biggest things right now. You're even seeing things like the IWM pulling back as well. Not too drastic, but still is pulling back. You want to hold above 212, 213. We go into what's happening with the Dow. Again, big pullback on the day. If there was anything that was concerning, it was this. The Dow also broke back below its previous all-time high that you set back here back in March 28th. So you're back below that previous all-time high, still above the pin and breakout, worth mentioning. But that's where we're at locally on that chart as well. Now, we're going to go a little bit further into this too about what I'm looking at, but I want to be really clear. Now, first things first, we go into what's happening this coming week with earnings, okay? Now, first off, you can also get your earnings information on our broker too with Moomoo. The link is down below. Make sure you check them out. It's who I use personally for all my trading. If you go over to news, you can go over here, go to calendar. You can go into your earnings as well here, just to let you know. For next week, and you can set all that up if you want. This is just a prettier visual for you. But again, so this coming week, we're going to have Spotify on Tuesday, Tesla Tuesday, Google Tuesday, obviously big day, Enphase, GM, Coke, a lot of names coming out here. Okay, Monday, typically not too much going on there. You're going to have going into Wednesday, IBM's your biggest one there, ServiceNow. ServiceNow's been getting beat up past few weeks as well, so worth watching that one also. But again, these aren't the biggest names. I will say definitely Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, your biggest days. And then going into next week is when you're going to get your bigger names as far as Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, etc. So again, the next 2 weeks are where things really heat up. I do think here, coming into this next week, Google will be the tone setter going into the rest of tech, which will come out next week. A little bit different with how we're releasing earnings this quarter, but worth mentioning. So again, going into like something like XLK, right? We saw XLK break all-time highs, pull back pretty quick. Now, again, what I want to highlight here is, again, we always zoom in and you're focused heavily on this short-term action like this, right? But what we don't focus on is where we're really moving here. So if I go to like the 4-hour chart, and XLK is your tech ETF, Apple, Google, etc. Right? You can go look into that more specifically. Microsoft and the big name there as well. So again, you go into what's happening here. We get our chart. You can just clearly see basically, and this is just a rough drawing since November 2022. I mean, just in a straight path up on XLK, like clear as day. Broke all-time highs from 2021. You're going crazy. Just a monster November 2022. Yeah, monster run. Okay, so the fact that you're pulling back isn't necessarily that concerning to me. Again, just setting up again. And you have to, and I say this all the time, you have to be unbiased in your viewpoint of the market, right? And that goes both ways, right? It goes with me being bearish, me being bullish. Now with NQ here, and I've said this a lot, I'm sitting pretty liquid. The only names I would be holding that I like long-term, Apple, Exxon. Only names I like long-term here. I like NVDA a lot too, but I haven't been buying because you weren't holding above your key level there. But again, Nasdaq, I'd be a fool to deny what could happen here. If you start breaking below 19.7 and hold, you're going to drop quickly down to 19.4. Okay, understand that. You got to get back above 19.95 to even remotely be bullish. Okay, that's the first barrier to entry. So that's where we're at right now. But I do think there's a possibility that if earnings don't produce and give us what we need to get as far as to continue getting this move up and, you know, the rate cut and things along those lines, there's a high potential chance that we come back down, and people may not want to hear this, 19K on Nasdaq specifically, just to get this, you know, cool off in the market, right? That doesn't mean we don't bounce between then, but again, that's where I'd be looking as well. And that's the major level of what I want to see us hold over the next few weeks, maybe even a month. Okay. That's the biggest level going back into August and September. What I want to see us hold is 19K on the Nasdaq. That's the biggest point I could say right now. We also saw something dangerous happening here with semis. And again, you know, I always say you got to be careful. You got to watch your levels. So 271 on SMH when that broke, all hell broke loose on semis. Now, potential setup here on semis was the double top opportunity coming in here, right? And then you're breaking back below that potential neckline down here as well, right? Breaking down. This is treacherous. This is terrible. I would assume SMH continued selling. Again, you're looking for support around 239, 240, possibly 241. So that's what I'm looking at there on SMH as well. So again, the story right now has looked more and more like some continuation on the downside. I personally am not trading the downside. I want to make that really clear. I don't find value in that trade for myself on broad markets. I want to make that extremely clear. It just doesn't make that much sense to me. Okay. Now, also too, guys, I do want to say, if you guys want to get the newsletter every week, we post it. So you go to our website. The link is down below for the newsletter. You just go over here to newsletter, come in here into your information. This is what the newsletter looks like. It gets into your email and maybe gets into your spam. You get the market, just so you know. Every week on Sunday, we release some of our favorite stocks, calendar, what we're looking at throughout the week, 100% free. Okay. And again, like people always say, you know, how do we get on that? It's always there for you guys for free. And I want to highlight though too, I don't do it enough, and I don't like to be pushy or salesy or this or that, but people and the sponsorships like Moomoo are what enable us and what kind of pay for us and fund us to do this free content for you guys, as far as making so much Twitter content, making, you know, content on TikTok, making content like the newsletter for free. We're not selling you anything there, right? That's what enables us to do that. So guys, if you're interested, if you're looking at a broker, I really do recommend it. Again, even if you sign up and you try the pay portfolio, right, completely free, I really do recommend it, because again, I see people complaining about their brokers all the time. And, you know, usually you don't get to try these things for free. So I just recommend trying it. And I always say try it, because I usually know what's going to happen when you do. But again, link is down below. So again, as we jump back into the market, a few things I want to talk about right now. The SPY. So we've seen this kind of trend here on the S&P when we go into data. SPY continues and usually moves in a direction of lower volume beginning of the week, higher volume end of the week. Now, one thing that we have seen is that your average volume has died down over the year. We were seeing Fridays upwards of 80, 90 million in volume. Mondays, we were seeing 60 to 70 million, right? Now that number has died down dramatically. What I will say here, though, again, we look at what's happening here. You don't always have to see increased volume on the market. You don't need to see it all the time. But you want to see increased volume either on a breakout or a continuation move. And what I will say, and again, this is me being unbiased with the market, is you are seeing increased selling on the downside. You're seeing increased volume on that downside push. So that also is concerning here, and why I'm not getting aggressive buying like crazy right now. When I start buying like crazy, I'm very clear on the channel. I'm very clear at Discord. I'm very clear on Twitter, right? And guys, if you're not following on Twitter, the link is down below again. I've been posting again on Twitter, so make sure you're checking it out. My stock updates, everything like that is all on there for free. Make sure you check it out. But I'm very clear. I try to be as transparent as possible. So I want to make that extremely clear here, is that you are seeing some signs of continuation for the downside. There's like, don't like get fooled with that. Like we had some traps before. I don't think right now this is a trap. I think we're seeing a real pullback here, some nice consolidation, and a good retracement overall going into these earnings. But it's like I said though, right? You've had a really great move, going back from June to now, really fantastic. Don't get upset when the market pulls back slightly, right? When you're pulling back, 30 to 20% of the entire move, really look at the vision of what's really taking place there. I mean, you really have to again, get your mind right, understand what you're looking at, and really have a plan and a perspective on that overall market. So that's the biggest thing there. Now, really quickly, I'll go over a few names. I don't want to do this video too long today. I'll get you guys out of here as quickly as possible. But again, NVIDIA, again, you're back down at your support level we mentioned yesterday, the 118 level. You're just sitting here chilling. Your next level under this is like 115. If you start to lose 115, this could get ugly. I'm going to let you know that right now. So you want to see 115 hold. If you get below 115, I would honestly, you have some smaller levels in here. I'd be looking for $100 though, to be honest. And if you hit $100 in NVIDIA, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't. I probably will end up buying like some crazy dated contracts and just not full send, full port, but it'll get interesting if I do that. So definitely what I'm watching and what I would be watching if I was anyone here right now. AVGO, you had a decent trade here, and it was one of the names I think I forgot to mention yesterday. So one of the things, it's been doing that. So we had a small trade to the upside this morning, ended up cutting it a little bit early. But AVGO, if you don't know, they just announced a deal with Microsoft to get a chip developed for their AI platform as well. They got a nice bump off that. Nancy Pelosi's been buying. But AVGO is kind of just pulling back here. And this is one thing that I want to say is a constant with the market. I don't expect specific stocks, and you can't really expect specific stocks to just outperform the entire, Nasdaq or the S&P. AVGO tried, and then it hit back to reality, right? So understand what's taking place there. So and this is for people that are hyper bullish, this or that, right? Is you got to understand that the market, for the most part, stocks are going to follow the market. So again, this is why I'm saying I'm just relaxing, I'm chilling. I don't love the downside here, but again, I'm focused on when I'm buying these and looking for signs of that reversal overall. So AVGO, you start getting below 156. I'll be looking at that 150 level potentially with that gap fill down there. That's what I'd be looking at there. I also like NVIDIA a lot as well. Again, NVIDIA contracts are getting cheaper by the day. Same with AVGO. They're a lot more affordable now, just to let you know. Again, the contracts I like a lot here are the 140s for January on NVIDIA. That's what I've been watching and what I'll end up buying eventually. AVGO, these are a little bit trickier. I'm less familiar with how these contracts move. I'd probably lean more towards the 180s. Personal opinion, it's very volatile. That's what I'd probably be looking at here. But again, I'll give more updates there for sure. Another name I'm watching here is Amazon. Okay, and Amazon had interesting news on the day. So again, they announced one of their best Prime days, increased sales. Amazon's earnings have also been fantastic. Amazon's also making higher lows on higher time frames. These are all big signs. You came down to our support we mentioned from yesterday, 180. You're bouncing off of it. You held up, one of the only green stocks on the day, actually. I like Amazon a lot. Now, when it gets closer to 200, I don't like Amazon as much, right? Because Bezos is selling the entire bag, apparently. I like Amazon. I'd be watching Amazon again, but I got to see signs of buyers on broad markets. And I know it's going to be like a reoccurring theme for me is I like this name, but I got to wait for the Nasdaq to get strength because, again, if the Nasdaq doesn't get strength, then I don't expect my tech stock to move in that direction. Now, if that's too complicated for someone to understand, I don't know how to say it more simply, so I apologize in advance if that was rude. But, yeah, I like near the 200s for January. January contract, you're going to notice that theme here. January 2025s are like my favorite contracts here, about 6 months away from here. Love them. Do what you got to do. Actually, like more like 5 months, but, yeah, still a big fan. Would be watching them close. Again, that's what I like there. So, again, keep it on your radar. Apple. Now, Apple, I think you're going to get an opportunity. I'm concerned about what is going to happen at earnings. I don't really know with Apple. They never really report great earnings. Our earnings we just had were the earnings that we were probably best earnings we're going to get for a while on Apple. But I've been waiting, pretty vocal about getting the retest of 220. That's what I want to see and how we react from that point. Hopefully we don't get that retest until their earnings day. So we might chop around, earnings come out, a little flash drop, and then we start bouncing from that point. That's when I would like to get an opportunity to buy there. Dated apples are, in my opinion, are one of the best positions in this entire stock market. 206 was the best buy that you could have got. But I will say these candles here on the daily and the 4-hour don't look like they want to bounce just yet. I will say it's holding up relative to the rest of the market. Those are things that you like to see. NVIDIA, Apple holding up pretty well. Okay. Microsoft, you have a week before their earnings, so or another week and a half, but you're balancing at the 433 level, get balanced. If you lose 433, sellers probably take control, you start falling back down. But again, very illiquid drop here. I'm going to tell you on Microsoft. So that's all I'm really watching. They're not buying anything just yet. Google earnings next week. I'm not doing anything on Google. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not a huge Google earnings guy. As long as you're above 175, you look good. You're still holding around the 178 level as well. Those are good signs there, but very volatile, straight move to the downside. So again, if you start bouncing here, Google will get love like almost immediately. Going into Netflix, they just had their earnings. A lot of people were interested in Netflix. He had a really good move on the day up, but then he came back down. Netflix is one of the biggest stocks that will follow the Nasdaq, and you will get the volatility a lot of the time here on Netflix. So again, same story, break up, follow the Nasdaq back down. If the Nasdaq gets love, you get back above 640, I like Netflix back to the upside. Until you get back above 640, I would not be touching this. I'd be very, very careful. Things really get interesting if you start breaking below like 610, 608, because you're very volatile back to the downside as well. There's no reason to get crazy here. Again, I do see the downside potential on a lot of these names. I want to make that really clear. But I don't... on my buy, I will say I try to stay as unbiased as possible. And if I am biased, I try not to enter a position, right? Because my risk is from an emotional standpoint at that point as well. But I will say here, if you get the drop and the Nasdaq starts to find buyers, I will be one of the first people to buy in, because I do like what's happening, what's going to happen over the next few months with rate cuts and what's happening with the markets as a whole as far as earnings, etc. I do like that. So I want to make that really, really, really clear. And Trump has been very clear that he doesn't want rates to be cut now, but he wants to start unloading the rates cuts as fast as possible, even though he has no real control over that. But he's going to be very pro-economy based on his words, not mine. So again, what I'd be focused on. So again, next few weeks, days, be patient. The setups are coming. Again, I'll have stuff posted on Twitter. The links are down below if you're interested. Have a good one, guys. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Sunday.